Welcome to Austin Real Estate Insider, where we tackle all the issues that buyers and sellers face in the Austin, Texas market. On today's show, we have a special guest, Angelina Ashton. Say hello.
Hey, everybody.
And today's topic, we're covering what first-time home buyers should look for and the steps they should take when they're first getting started in the process. And that's why Angelina is our guest today, because she is fantastic at working at first-time home buyers. Isn't that right, Angelina?
Well, so I'm excited to be here today and to talk with you guys about first-time home buying. And thanks for having me, Matt. There's a lot of stuff we want to kind of cover today. And I think the most important, if I'm correct, Matt, we want to start out with the number one thing that you have to do in finding an agent and what you should do as a first-time home buyer.
Exactly. So, as you get started, once you've made a decision that you want to buy a home, right? There's always that first step. And that first step is finding the right agent. Because everybody knows there's an agent on every corner. Your cousin, your second cousin's probably an agent, but does that make them right for you? Probably not, in all honesty. And you should definitely interview a couple different agents until you find the one that is the right fit for you. Angelina, what are some things they should look for in an agent? And how do they know that agent is right for them?
Well, I would say, first of all, first-time home buying is a very overwhelming idea to a lot of first-time home buyers because, one, a lot of people don't think they can get approved or that they can find a house or that it's just not for them. So finding an agent is so important because it allows you to have somebody who's truly your partner, who really can educate you, who's experienced, who can communicate well, and who's transparent. And I think when you find that agent, first and foremost, whether you're buying in 3 months, whether you're buying in 6 months or a year from now, it's really important to find that agent right from the beginning because you want somebody who can educate you along the way and can really understand the process.
All right, so you just listed off 4 key things that agents should have. So let's kind of dive into each one of those. So experience. Every agent has experience in different fields, specialties, things like that. What would you recommend the agent be experienced in working with a first-time home buyer?
I mean, it's very simple. Like when you're talking to agents about first-time home buying or that you want to buy a house, I would simply just say, how many first-time home buyers have you worked with? What is your experience with first-time home buyers? Because as you and I both know, you might be a very experienced agent, but you might not be experienced with first-time home buying anymore. And you really need somebody who's got the patience, who can really take their time and guide you.
Right. And, that kind of goes back to how many first-time home buyers, has that agent worked with. And that's going to be able to provide them the knowledge and the education that they can provide to that first-time home buyer, correct?
Right, right. Because if you get somebody who's a very experienced agent, they might just be working with a lot of second-time, third-time, or investor type of clients. And it's not that they don't know the process. They probably know it very, very well. It's just that they're going to assume you know it just as much. And it might make you as a first-time home buyer feel a little anxious because you're not being guided the way you need to with an agent who's used to working with somebody who's never bought a home.
So that's a very great point. So prime example is myself and Angelina. I'm not the best first-time home buyer agent, but I have, my focus is in other areas. Whereas Angelina, she crushes it with first-time home buyers, and she's even created a binder or Google Drive doc with all kinds of steps, documents, education, things like that. Can you elaborate more on that and how you have educated your clients in the past?
Yeah. So I mean, just quick high level, when I first meet a client that's a first-time home buyer, I kind of try to get where they're coming from, what their goals are. Once I have all of that information, it's always nice for them to have a point of reference to go to because it's hard to remember all the things that we're going to throw at you. So what I do is I create a Google Doc and I put in there one folder or one tab that is basically all of the files that we're going to have along the process. The most important tab for them in this Google Doc is going to be the timeline. And so what I do in there is I put kind of like a standardized timeline in there with dates. So that way, while they're sitting there going through the process, there's some highs and lows during your home buying where you're busy looking for houses and talking to lenders. And then you find a house and you sit there for a minute and you feel like you're supposed to be doing stuff. So to have an agent who can put a timeline together that you can go, you know, let me go look at that on my Google Doc and see where we're at in the process. It really gives a first-time home buyer some ease.
Yeah, that makes sense. That way they're not always worried like what's going on. Okay, no, we've got 3 days here, we've got 4 days here, or this needs to be done here. You know, and that kind of leads into the communication and transparency. It's, you know, laying out all the steps that are needed when buying a home, and then as well as once the home's under contract, there's things that need to be done and costs associated with those things that a lot of people don't frankly know, and they could get quickly overwhelmed with, wait, I got to write another check or I got to spend money here. And by having that more outline and put together, like, hey, here's what to expect once the home's under contract. Here's what we need to do. Here's the average cost, things like that. I think that goes a long way to basically, yeah, to your point, put them at ease, right?
You know, I kind of want to say something to that is that goes back to our conversation about experience and working with an agent who's used to first-time home buying, because you said something there where there's a lot of costs that you don't realize in buying a home, other than the loan and your regular principal and interest, right? So a good first-time home buyer agent is going to explain a lot of that stuff up to you up front. So you're somewhat aware. You might not still all understand it, but at least you know, hey, I need to maybe reevaluate certain aspects of my financial situation because I didn't know about these things. Whereas an experienced agent who normally doesn't work with first-time home buying, they might skip over that because they assume you know it.
Right.
So that kind of ties in with the experience and the communication and how they're presenting that information to you. Because remember, your agent is your advisor, right? And so the goal of having an agent is to take workload off of your plate and help you find the right house, not for you to do all the work, especially when it's your first time buying.
And so before we go on to our next item, so you tell me if this is a good idea or not, but like, I think people should basically list out, you know, maybe come up with a list of 10 questions and put the agent through an interview and see, you know, they don't need to hire the first agent they meet with, even though, you know, me, they would, but I'm kidding. But,
well, yeah, they would just be like, I have to work with them. They would just see you and they'd be done.
But happens in the interview process, right? I mean, you're spending your hard-earned money. You're buying a large asset, and so
it's one of the big assets you buy.
Yeah. So do your due diligence, and so once they've got the agent interviewed, picked out, ready to go, step number 2 is picking the right lender.
Right. That is huge. So I think that's just as important when you say as finding an agent. Okay.
Now, why is that? So a lot of people sometimes even do that before they even find an agent, but really they should wait and do, because the agent's always going to have somebody they recommend, and then they should always, pick another company over here and compare the two, right? And so what are some things that the first-time home buyer should look for in a lender?
Well, let me answer your first question on why is it just as important. I think it's just as important because a lot of people overlook the importance of a lender through the process and how they can dictate how your home buying experience can be. And when I say experience, it's not the warm and fuzzies. It's how much they can hinder or make the process very smooth. So when picking, going into your second question, when picking a lender, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, because we've all seen deals fall apart. They found the home they want. They're ready to go. We're through option, and lo and behold, the lender missed something on due diligence on that, and then all of a sudden, they can't approve the loan for the buyer. Right. So then the deal falls apart, and that is the worst thing that can happen, and it's something that is avoidable by picking the right lender.
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, it happens. Even as a good agent, you can recommend a lender all day long. And sometimes, like you said at the beginning, there's a friend of the family that's a lender, or, they saw something like a good deal through their major bank and they choose something thinking they're getting, someone who's going to take care of them, or, oh, it's a big bank, they should know how to do this. And then you get to like a week before closing. This has happened to a client of mine who decided to go a different route, and it pushed closing out 2.5 weeks because the lender didn't get all the right information. So I think when you think about picking a lender, one, if you have the right agent and you picked a good agent, they should be able to give you at least 2 to 3 references on good lenders that they've either worked with or they know. The most important thing I would want to really drive home for first-time home buyers is don't look at it when you pick a lender with rates only in mind, meaning your interest rate only in mind. I think a lot of people get short-sighted by seeing, oh, they have a lower rate, I'm going to go with them. You really need to look at it like, I need a good lender versus just a good rate. Because really your rate is all dependent on your credit score anyways. So the reason you want to pick that good lender is, like we said earlier, you don't want somebody who's not experienced with the process or doesn't understand the market in Austin. That's another big thing.
Yeah, and here's, I always recommend picking a lender that only does mortgages and one that is local, meaning they at least have an office here and a presence here, right? So by doing those 2 things, you really put yourself far and above going with like an online lender or a big bank where pre-approval, underwriting, all this stuff gets shipped out. It's on somebody's desk 8 states away, this, that, and everything else. Whereas, somebody that just does mortgages and is local, it's definitely a lot more efficient. The process is going to work smoother, and you're more than likely you'll be able to close with no issue. Am I right?
I think one of the things that you have to think about when you're finding a lender, it's like what we said earlier, like you got to find a good agent. You have to have a good lender, because as a first-time home buyer, there's all this stuff you have to understand about the buying process alone. There's also all this stuff you have to understand about your loan, and some of the things you really want to understand is, one, I think you hit the nail on the head. A local lender is key, not only because they're local and you can go to their office and sit down with them and talk to them if you wanted to, but when you put in offers, especially in our market, which gets super crazy in the busy season, and it's just nothing but multiple offer after multiple offer. Believe it or not, I have had listing agents that are working with the sellers notice a local lender and they say, wow, you're working with them. They're great to work with. I know the loan's going to get fully approved. We won't have any issues. I'm so happy you're working with them.
I've done that. And, when there's a house, 2 offers were identical, two different lenders though. I went with the offer with the lender that I knew that was here in town. I knew they did a great job, and the others, no idea who the lender was. I didn't know if it was going to run smooth. So I went with the offer that had the lender that I knew who they were. I didn't know the person, but I knew the company. So.
And I mean, like, for everyone that's watching, Matt, he works with a lot of investors. So he has a lot of listings. So he's on the other side. He's the one that's working with our sellers and listings. And I'm usually the buyer's agent trying to get him to take our offer. And the reason he's saying that he chooses like a local lender versus somebody he's not as familiar with is just kind of like what I said earlier. When you don't have a lender who, one, is doing their due diligence up front and getting a lot of that paperwork during pre-approval, a lot of lenders don't do that. They just look at your credit score and they're like, yeah, you're pre-approved. That's not 100% guaranteed, And so with a good lender, they're going to get all that information. You're pretty much to that closeness of being pre-approved. And what happens is, as a seller, and Matt, you can probably contest to this, is that they get nervous when they are not recognizing who that lender is. And they maybe have had a bad experience with outside lenders. And so they might solely pick an offer, even an offer that's maybe not as aggressive as the one that's a different lender. They might pick the local lender because they feel more comfortable that the deal won't fall through.
Exactly. It's a lot of work when that happens. 20 days into it and you're closing in 6 days, and then all of a sudden it falls apart because the lender, both for the agents and the seller, it's not worth it. So okay, so we've covered that. We've got the right lender. So definitely pick your agent. get the right lender. What are 3 things that first-time home buyers could do personally to get themselves ready for it?
So I would say there's some good, really 3 top items that I would focus on. You know, one is really preparing yourself mentally, really understanding the process. So I think, you know, there's always this like excitement when you first start. You've gotten your pre-approval, you have your agent, now you're out there looking at houses, right? Don't lose the momentum. And what I mean by this is, especially in aggressive hot markets like Austin, you are going to probably lose on one property, most likely. I mean, even the best of agents are going to lose a deal. And it can be a number of reasons. It can just be that maybe, you know, the multiple offers, you could only hit a certain threshold with your buying power, the amount of that you have on your loan, and, you know, you did your best. But don't let that discourage you. You know, a good agent is going to put all that information up front. So that's number one, like prepare yourself mentally. Don't lose your momentum. Stay involved. Understand the process, even after you go under contract. You know, don't feel like, oh, I can sit back and I can relax and, you know, not worry about anything.
Don't relax until it's closed.
Yeah, you got to be in it. Until you get to closing day, you're in the game, right? But a good agent is going to guide you, and you're not even going to have to worry about that stuff. So I think that's number one, just being prepared mentally for that kind of thing. I mean, when you add to anything about that, is there anything you can add to that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, you're competing against other buyers. You may win, you may not. It's just don't get discouraged. Keep the momentum going forward. And that's all you can do, right? Every day in this world is different. So you never know what's going to come up, you know, Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. So keep the momentum going. And then what's next for them?
So I would say next would be know the costs involved, know your financial situation. So when you're first evaluating, like, do I want to buy a home, all of that, I mean, a lot of people overlook the costs that are involved in buying a home. It's not just, like I said earlier, the loan and the principal and interest. There's, you know, you've got option money that you have to put in. You have all these costs that you have to bring to the table for closing. So I think understanding that with your agent is very important. So that's one of the questions you can ask your agent when you're interviewing, like, talk to me about the process. What costs are involved? And if you have an agent that's like kind of beating around the bush or whatever, doesn't really give you the full breadth of what is all involved, that's a red flag. So I would also say, coupled with knowing your cost, is knowing your financial situation, understanding your credit score. And that's where a good lender can help you. Even if it's like 6 to 12 months out, you can go talk to a lender, and by law, you're protected to get your credit pulled 3 times a year when buying a home, and it doesn't hurt you. And the reason that's important is if you have 6 months, you might have time to actually do some work on your credit that'll help you get a lower interest rate. So that's a very important step. So that's number 2. Number 3 is just be ready to act. And I would say be ready to act is so important. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I have my own, and I kind of want to hear your thoughts on it, Matt.
That is so important, because so many people tend to drag their feet, you know, and I've seen, and I've been part of deals where it's like, we lost it because you were too slow to make the decision. And I think what a lot of people forget is, if the house is almost perfect for them, right? Go get it under contract, because you have that option period in the state of Texas, right? You know, whether it's 100 or 150 or 200 bucks, if that money is not worth losing, why are you even trying to buy a house, right? Because then you can take that option period and do your due diligence, make sure that's the right house. And if it's not the right house, you know, after a couple of days during an option, okay, cancel the contract, lose the 150 bucks, and on to the next one, right? But it's much better mentally to do that than to get the, oh, we missed out, they accepted another offer, you took too long, right? And then you know, you're getting started, and you're like, what if? At least doing that, you're willing to take the risk and, you know, take that step and jump in. So it's not like, hey, we got the house under contract, you're stuck buying that house. You had that option period, and it's only a couple months. Well worth it. I tell clients that all the time. I was like, is it better to have the house under contract and then cancel it and lose 200 bucks, or miss a great opportunity to buy this house because we're so pushed for sometimes due diligence when it's time to get, you know, that house under contract. Let's just get it done, right? Let's get it under contract and get the ball rolling.
Well, I think too, though, like coming from a first-time home buyer agent, me working with a lot of first-time home buyers, I think this also kind of goes with picking the right agent is, you know, a lot of my clients that are first-time home buying, I usually know about 6 months out. You know, I have some leeway. I have time to work with them. And I'm not saying like we beat the streets constantly for that 6 months, but I think what prepares you to be ready to act is one, you have a good agent that's getting you in front of a lender, helping you understand your financial situation. And then two is, you know, a good agent is going to be patient and actually take you out, even if it is 6 months out, and let you see the market. And I think that's a thing that a lot of first-time homebuyers don't do. They look on Zillow, they look on Redfin, they look on all these sites, which is not a problem because they're syndicated from our site. But what happens is you don't get the real feeling of a home and you don't really understand the market till you're out there. And I think a good first-time home buyer agent is going to take you out there and they're going to show you like, hey, this is the area you really want. This is your price range. Are you willing to buy that type of home in this area? Are you willing to sacrifice certain things? So that way, when you get down to the time frame of, okay, we're ready to get serious.
We're preparing them to act when the time comes. No, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Better
yeah.
than
So, yeah, that's why I'm very patient with first-time home buyers. I love it. You know, I mean, it's a great experience to see them find the home that they love. And you always know when it's your home. You can feel it. Like people will be like, this is it. You know, and it's such a great experience to see young people building their wealth. And I think a lot of people, I think what I'd like to end us with today is, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'm too young, I can't buy, or I don't have 20% down to put. You don't have to have that much to put down. And you can buy. And if you're renting and spending $1,200 to $2,000 a month on rent, and you're renting more than 6 months, then you should really consider buying. And you can do it. You just have to have the right team behind you.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's show. If there's a show topic that you want us to talk about, leave a comment. Let us know. We'd love to do a show on it. Angelina, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, anytime. I'm happy to come back.
Perfect. And guys, we will see you next week, but definitely not Angelina. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right, guys.